The one where Emma cries is the second episode of the 9th season of Friends. This is directed by Sheldon Epps, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And I'm really glad that I'm rewatching this one because I think based on rumours, I always believed something about the purpose of Tulsa, which I'll talk about in a moment. But actually looking into it, it seems like that might not be true, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. As always, there will be spoilers as I talk about the various aspects of the narrative, and in general, it's not bad. It actually picks up where the last episode left off, with Ross realising that Rachel said yes to Joey's fake proposal. And I'll be honest, I feel like that scene wasn't necessary. It just felt a little bit pointless because we could have still understood Ross's feelings without needing to pick up immediately where we left off. But other than that, I think everything in the episode has a place, and I will talk about, well, I'll talk about Emma very quickly because I don't have too many thoughts here. Basically, as the title suggests, Emma keeps crying, and Rachel can't get her to stop. And what I think is really great about this, now I'm not a parent to a child, I have a cat, I realise it's not the same, although my cat also whinges quite a lot. The day I picked her up when she was a kitten, this is a tangent, the human at the time told me that she whinged all of the time. My little 9-week-old kitten was already a whinger, and 11 years later she hasn't stopped. This is completely irrelevant. The point there is that I feel like if you are a parent with a baby who cries constantly, obviously there are warning signs, there are times when to seek medical advice, but also I think it's providing that assurance that if you can't instantly make your baby stop crying, that might be quite a common situation. So I think it is providing some comfort there in some situations. And I'd say we heard Emma crying just the right amount, by which I mean, I'm sure like most people, I hate the sound of babies crying, not just because it's upsetting, but because it's really irritating. And we heard Emma crying a lot, but not too much. So I think they got the point across without it ever being too irritating. And this concludes with Monica realizing she's super aunt, and she's able to get Emma to stop crying. And it's a really sweet moment. So not a bad part of the episode. We then come to Ross and Joey. And Ross is really, really annoyed. And to be honest, Joey was saying he didn't do anything wrong, which I agree with. I fully agree with it. I don't necessarily think he handled everything perfectly, but I don't think anything was his fault. But as Ross pointed out, Joey should have been able to tell him. And yes, I agree with that, but I also don't think it's Joey's fault that he was scared to tell Ross. So I feel like Ross is maybe overreacting, or at least blaming Joey more than he should be. I kind of am on Joey's side here, but maybe I can see where Ross is coming from. And Joey says it'll make you feel better. Hit me. Hit me, hit me, hit me. And he does. Ross punches him. Or he goes to. Joey ducks as a reflex. Ross punches the pole in Central Park. And the noise, the collision, it was horrific. And Gunther is giddy with satisfaction from this. His facial expression is brilliant. And then Joey tells him, when a fist comes at you, you're supposed to duck. And he goes to punch Ross to show that Ross would duck, and he doesn't duck, and it's chaotic, and the scene is just in the best possible way, completely all over the place, and a lot of fun, and Joey's misusing air quotes, and it's tremendous fun, but I obviously don't like seeing Ross and Joey fighting like this, and it's unusual for us to see any character really being really, really angry. Even when we had episodes with, for example, when Joey was angry at Chandler for sleeping with his girlfriend, I feel like it was more passive anger. There was almost a sarcasm to it, whereas Ross is just furious. And it's quite uncomfortable to see, but in a very effective way. And they go to the hospital and they have a nice conversation. And yeah, I liked how everything concluded with Joey and Ross. I thought that worked well. I do think Ross is being unreasonable, but I guess to some extent his feelings are valid there. And then we come to Chandler. And this is the bit where I'm glad I did some digging. I'm glad I did a bit of investigating because Chandler can't sleep. He's worried about this work meeting. Unfortunately, because of that, he goes to this work meeting and falls asleep during the meeting and wakes up and says, yes, I'm on board. Chandler's going to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And of course, Monica's not happy about this and he tries to get out of it, but it doesn't work. Turns out he's going to Tulsa. And I had always believed, well, not always, I assumed the first time I saw this episode I didn't know about this, but it's generally believed that this was written into the story so that Matthew Perry could have time away from the show. Because obviously, I don't want to go into too much detail, but going forward, we do have some scenes from Tulsa. So obviously, they're not filmed on the set with the rest of the cast. And it's believed, or there were rumours, I guess, that this was so Matthew Perry could go to rehab, film his scenes outside of the usual schedule. And that seems to not be true. I had a look through, well, I initially did some quick Googling, and people were saying there's no evidence for this. And then I checked his memoir, which I fully recommend if you haven't read it. It's a difficult read, but it's absolutely worth it. And in his memoir, Matthew Perry said, and I quote, "9 was the only year I was completely sober." And my first thought was, well, is that because you were in rehab? Were you sober because you were actively taking steps towards the right treatment? But then he goes on to explain that he was in rehab the summer between seasons 8 and 9. So that doesn't seem to be the case. Obviously, if anybody has any information to contradict what I'm saying, please feel free to share. But from Matthew Perry's memoir, it seems like he was completely sober, and that's because, from what I'm reading, he was in rehab in between seasons 8 and 9. So I was really happy to read that, because when I was watching this and I realised, oh, it's a Tulsa episode, my heart sank a bit, because my first thought was, this is when Matthew Perry was in rehab, and that's why they filmed kind of around about that. And yeah, it turns out that's not the case, at least as far as the internet tells me and Matthew Perry's memoir says. So that's quite reassuring. And apparently he got his Emmy nomination that year as well. So a lot of great things came out of that research, and I thought that was definitely worth mentioning, but more on Tulsa as and when. It's a solid episode. Season 9 is definitely off to a great start, the one where Emma cries. Needless to say, it's a really good episode of Friends. Personal highlights, I don't think there are. Well, maybe there are. The conversation between Joey and Ross at the hospital, I thought that was quite nice. It was funny, but it was heartfelt. And Phoebe, the way Phoebe reacted, trying to escape when Monica was holding Emma and Rachel wanted to sleep, and Phoebe was gone. She was out of there. And well, I guess just the whole experience with Chandler here and what the research led to, that's obviously a big highlight. In general, though, really solid episode. The one where Emma cries is a really decent episode of Friends.